Blood makes you family. Power makes you enemies. Asterisk in the streets. Loyalty is the currency that buys survival. But when two brothers hold the same crown, one truth always rises, there's only room for one king. Asterisk, the story of Big Meech and Southwest Tee didn't start with gold chains and foreign cars. It started with cold nights in Detroit, where streetlights cast long shadows on dreams too big for the block. Two young men, bound by blood and ambition, looked at the same city and saw two very different maps. Meech saw the world wide open, waiting to be taken. Tee saw a fortress, strong, steady, and worth protecting at all costs. Asterisk together. They built the Black Mafia Family, a name whispered in alleyways, feared in boardrooms, and watched by every badge in the country. Money moved faster than whispers. Cars rolled cleaner than church clothes on Sunday. From the outside, it was perfect, a brotherhood that couldn't be broken. But inside, the cracks were already forming. Asterisk Meech's dream was expansion, Atlanta, Miami, Los Angeles. He wanted to plant the BMF flag in every city skyline. Tee's vision was different, keep it tight, keep it quiet, make it last. Where Meech thrived on risk, Tee trusted control. One chased the high of the hustle, the other the safety of the stronghold. Asterisk, it worked for a while. Each played his part. Meech was the face, the voice, the one who lit up every room. Tee was the mind, the strategist, the one who kept the machine running when the lights went out. People called them unstoppable, but power is never shared without a price. The more they won, the higher the stakes. And in the game they played, success doesn't just bring money. It brings eyes. Eyes that watch. Eyes that wait. Eyes that want what you have. Asterisk the streets started to notice the differences. Meech bold moves made headlines, and those headlines drew heat. Tee's cautious ways began to look like hesitation. Friends picked sides without saying a word, and every decision, every move, every deal became a quiet test of loyalty. Asterisk but here's the thing about empires, they don't crumble overnight, they crack in silence. They weaken in whispers. And before you even realize it, the storm is already on its way. It started small. A deal Meech wanted to push through fast, Tee said wait. A shipment Tee wanted to keep low-key, Meech wanted to flip big and loud. At first, they called it different styles. But in this game, different styles can turn into different sides. Asterisk Meech believed the empire had to grow or die. He saw every street in America as a block they could own. To him, hesitation was weakness. Tee believed too much growth too fast was suicide. He'd seen crews implode from greed, from reaching too far, too fast. To him, patience was power. Asterisk, the streets began to whisper, Meech is the boss now. Tee's playing it safe. Others said, Tee's the brains. Meech just wants the spotlight. They didn't need to say it to their faces. The brothers could feel it in the way people paused before speaking, in the way old friends stopped making eye contact. Asterisk one night in Atlanta. The tension spilled over. Meech had arranged a high-stakes meeting without Tee's knowledge. The plan was bold, risky enough to double their profits overnight, but dangerous enough to bring federal heat if it went wrong. Tee showed up late, his face stone cold. In that moment, they weren't brothers in business. They were two leaders fighting over the same throne. Asterisk, you're thinking too small. Tee, Meech said, his voice calm but sharp like glass. Asterisk, and you're thinking too loud. Tee replied, barely raising his tone, but every word carried weight. Asterisk, the room went silent. Even the walls seemed to lean in. Their crew watched without moving because in that moment, picking a side wasn't just about business, it was about survival. Asterisk Meech left that night with the deal still in motion. Tee left with his trust in Meech cracked, maybe for good. They didn't say it out loud, but something had shifted. This wasn't just a disagreement, it was the beginning of a war they didn't even know they were already fighting. Asterisk, and outside their circle, the streets could smell the tension. Rivals could sense the opening. Law enforcement could hear the cracks. In the world of BMF, every weakness is an invitation. Asterisk, the empire was still standing, but its foundation was starting to rot. Asterisk, by the time winter hit, the air around BMF felt different. The money was still flowing. The cars still gleamed under streetlights, but inside the circle, the trust was fading fast. You could see it in the way Meech's calls went unanswered for hours. You could hear it in the clipped tone of Tee's voice when they finally spoke. Asterisk, the streets had learned to read between the lines. Crews that once moved in perfect sync now hesitated. Messages got lost. Orders came late. In the underworld, that's how empires die, not from an enemy's bullet, but from hesitation inside your own ranks. Law enforcement was circling. Unmarked cars rolled slow through neighborhoods they had no business in. Wiretaps were quietly humming in safe houses no one thought could be touched. Every flashy party Meech threw became another reason for the feds to watch closer. T knew it. He warned him. But Meech believed showing weakness was worse than getting caught. Then came the night that pushed everything over the edge. A major shipment was coming in, big enough to cement Meech's vision for national expansion. T didn't like the timing. The streets were hot, the feds were watching, and a rival crew was sniffing around. T told Meech to pull back. Meech smiled, shook his head, and moved forward anyway. What neither of them knew was that someone in their circle had already chosen a side, and it wasn't theirs. The location of the drop was passed to the wrong ears. Hours before the deal, rival cars were seen cruising past the site. Then, just before midnight, the police hit it. Lights, sirens, chaos. Half the product was gone before anyone could blink. Half their men were either in cuffs or on the run. In the aftermath, Meech paced in silence, staring at the floor. T didn't yell, didn't curse. He just looked at his brother with an expression that said more than words ever could. I told you. From that night on, the whispers in the streets got louder. Meech is reckless. T's slipping, and for the first time, outsiders weren't just predicting the fall of BMF, they were betting on it. The brothers were still standing side by side in public, but in the shadows, they were standing on opposite sides of a growing crack that no one could repair. The days after the failed shipment felt colder than winter itself. Meech and T still showed up together when the streets were watching, still moved like brothers, still spoke like leaders. But when the doors closed, the air between them was heavy with unspoken blame. Meech couldn't shake the feeling that T had been holding him back. T couldn't ignore the cost of Meech's ambition. Every conversation was sharper. Every meeting shorter. The sound of trust breaking is quiet. But once you hear it, you can't unhear it. The final straw came during a sit-down with the crew. They were planning their next move, how to rebuild after the loss. Meech laid out a bold play, one that could make back everything they'd lost and more. T leaned forward, eyes locked on his brother, and said, "We don't need to win it all back in one night. We need to survive long enough to keep playing." It should have been just another disagreement. But this time, Meech didn't back down. His voice cut through the room. We ain't playing the same game. T, you're trying to save what we got. I'm trying to take everything they said we couldn't have. The silence that followed felt like the space before a gunshot. Number one in the room moved. No one dared breathe too loud. Because they all knew this wasn't just two brothers arguing. This was two kings claiming the same crown. Later that night, they stood face to face. No crew, no audience, just two men who had built an empire from nothing, now staring at the possibility of losing it all, not to the streets, not to the law, but to each other. "Blood makes you my brother," T said quietly. Meech stepped closer. "And power makes me your rival." The streetlights outside flickered in the cold wind. Somewhere in the distance, sirens wailed. Inside, the silence between them said everything. The next move they made wouldn't just decide the future of BMF, it would decide which brother would still be standing when the smoke cleared. 2 sides. One empire. Only one can rule. The city doesn't sleep when kings go to war. Every street corner, every whispered phone call, every shadow moving in the dark, it all leads to one question. When blood turns cold, can an empire survive? Sirens scream in the distance. A door slams. Somewhere, a gun is cocked. The faces in the crowd know something is coming, but they don't know when. Meech moves like a man with nothing left to lose. T watches like a man who refuses to lose what's left. The streets are split. Crews are choosing sides. And every choice comes with a price. Betrayal isn't a question anymore, it's a guarantee. In the empire they built together, loyalty is about to become the most dangerous currency of all. One last meeting, one last shot at keeping the dream alive, or ending it for good. The room will be silent, the stakes louder than gunfire. No one knows if they'll walk out as brothers, or as enemies. This is the moment the streets have been waiting for. Big, Meech, Southwest Tee. 2 sides. 1. Empire. Only one can rule. BMF Season 4, Episode 10. Coming soon.